Let's go to Canberra now and catch up with Senator Nampijinpa Price. Thanks for joining us, Senator. We've talked about these crime issues in Alice Springs before. The alleged perpetrators, are so young, but it was so bad a couple of weeks ago, they were warning residents not to go out, to stay home in Alice Springs until they could control the situation. Tell us what it's like living there and what needs to be done.
The problem is absolutely out of control, and it has been for some time. This is just escalating and escalating and escalating. I had a prowler looking through the windows at my own house while my 21-year-old son was home. I wasn't there at the time, but there are numerous members of the community whose homes have been broken into. We've got this situation now where kids are stealing cars and are going on joy rides. There was footage the other week of about 3 different cars going on joy rides in the middle of the town on the same street, driven by young people. We've got the Territory Government who has, increased the age of criminal responsibility so that there won't be any consequences for these behaviours for, children under the age of 14 is what they're looking at. And it's just, there seems to be no consequences for the fact that these kids haven't been taken care of when they were younger by family. There's no consequences now that they're creating, such crime. They're getting away with it, and that's why they're continuing to do it. We shouldn't be relying on everyday citizens to make citizens' arrests in these situations. Police will be reluctant to pursue these vehicles, obviously, because if a death occurs, then that's another, the media will be more concerned about a black death in custody than actually the fact that these people are putting their own lives at risk and locals' lives at risk at the same time. And we're getting to the point now where we might have to call in the AFP. Is it the AFP? Is it the ADF? Do we need soldiers on our streets to bring about some calm?
Well, it is extraordinary because I've been following these news reports and talking to you about it, and this is the problem. You're going to get up, you'll end up here with innocent people getting hurt or killed because of this sort of behaviour. We just saw that footage as to how dangerous it is. But this is happening in a significant town, a town of 15,000 people or more, where you should be able to expect some law and order.
Absolutely. I mean, we've got a population of around 25,000, but that's decreasing because people don't want to be living there anymore. The Territory Government seriously need to get off their backside and start protecting locals. They need to make sure that the problem starts, when these children, when these young people are children, where they're not having, they're not being protected in terms of their human rights from abuse, sexual abuse, from dysfunctional households, because they're being left to remain in that dysfunction because they are Indigenous kids and because there's this whole, idea that somehow we're going to have another stolen generation and that it's racist to remove these kids from these circumstances. Well, this is the result of not removing kids from dysfunction. They end up on the streets joyriding. They end up being locked up eventually. But there's like lack of consequence as we go along from when they're small children to now they're becoming adults. And as I said, something drastic really needs to happen because this government haven't been able to do anything about any of this situation, whether it's Alice Springs, whether it's Katherine, whether it's Tennant Creek, it's also Darwin now, and they're failing Territorians.
I just want to segue to another issue which is indirectly linked, and that is the Territory Government is now looking at changes to their anti-discrimination laws, and the religious organisations in the Territory, including the Catholic Church, saying that they might have to close their schools down if these changes go ahead because they won't be able to make sure they only have Catholic staff and the like. Here's the Archbishop of Darwin.
If we cannot have proper Catholic schools in our schools, and I'm sure that would be true for many other of the faith schools as well, if you cannot be authentic, what's the point of having them?
Well, surely this isn't going to come to pass, Jacinta, because without these schools, all sorts of problems with young Territorians will only get worse.
That's exactly right. I mean, this is an attack on religious freedom. This is an attack on faith schools within the Northern Territory. You know, if this government actually invested as much energy into actually taking care of vulnerable kids, making sure that crime's not being committed on our streets, as much energy as they invest into, attacking our faith schools into that area, they might actually get something done. But instead, this is where they focus their efforts. This is all ideologically driven. They don't consider the consequences or the outcomes. They haven't done the right, they haven't had the right conversations with the stakeholders involved and what those consequences might mean to them. I mean, education is so important, and you can't tell me, that the schools of faith haven't delivered some of the best education outcomes for students in the Northern Territories. I mean, students across the country, really, and this is what they're proposing to do, is to try to weaken them, dismantle them, and effectively silence or basically interfere in how these schools operate.
It's a worry. They've got to sort it out.
It's a lose-lose situation.
It is indeed. Thanks so much for joining us, Senator. Appreciate it.